Your entire life has been shaped by a person who no longer exists. The child who decided you were shy, the teenager who concluded you weren't good enough, the young adult who settled into a story about what was possible for you. Every limitation you carry today was authored by a version of you that has already disappeared. Except you kept their manuscript. By the end of this, the phrase "born again" will mean something so practical, so immediate, that you'll wonder how it ever got reduced to a Sunday morning ritual. When Nicodemus came to Jesus in the 3rd chapter of John, he asked the obvious question, how can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb? He was thinking physically, literally. And the response he received cut straight past biology into something far more radical. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the spirit is spirit. 2 births, 2 entirely different dimensions of existence. The first one gave you a body. The second one gives you a self, a consciously chosen self. Neville Goddard spent decades teaching that this passage had been catastrophically misread. The new birth, he argued, was psychological, internal. It was the moment a person dies to their old concept of themselves and awakens as someone new. The water and the spirit mentioned in that passage correspond to your current mental state and the new state you're moving into. You leave one, you enter the other. The old man drowns. That's the baptism. And this is where most people stall. They hear new identity, and they think affirmations in the mirror. They think vision boards. They think about adding something positive on top of everything they already believe about themselves. But stacking a new idea on top of an old identity is like painting over rust. The surface looks clean for a week. Then the corrosion bleeds through. The real process demands something far more uncomfortable. You have to let the old self die, completely. The person who was rejected, who failed, who learned to shrink, that person has to stop breathing inside your mind. Every memory you use as evidence for why you can't have what you want, that belongs to the dead man. Every story about your childhood, your past relationships, your financial history that you carry like an identity card, the dead man's papers. This is why Jesus said you must be born of water and spirit. Water, in biblical symbolism, represents the psychological state. Your current consciousness, your assumptions, the mental environment you swim in every day. Spirit represents the new idea, the new assumption, the seed of who you're becoming. Being born of water means you acknowledge where you are. Being born of spirit means you refuse to stay there. Neville put it bluntly. You are God in the act of creating yourself. The I am that spoke to Moses from the burning bush is the same I am that precedes every statement you make about your identity. I am broke, I am unlucky, I am always the one who gets left behind. Those aren't observations, they're creative acts. Every time you say I am, followed by a limitation, you are literally speaking yourself into that shape. You're using the same power that said, "Let there be light," and you're using it to build a prison. So what does the actual death look like in practice? Picture the person you've been for the last 5 years. Their habits, their inner monologue, the tone of voice they use when they talk to themselves at 2 a.m, the things they assume will happen when they walk into a room, that entire constellation of beliefs, reactions and expectations, that's your old man. And the instruction is clear, put him off. Paul wrote to the Ephesians, "Put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and put on the new self." That language is deliberate. Put off, put on, like clothing. You wore one identity, now you wear another. The question is whether you'll actually change clothes, or just keep admiring the new outfit from across the room. The mental discipline this requires is staggering. Your old self-concept has momentum. It has years of evidence. It has neural grooves worn so deep that thinking the old thoughts feels like gravity, effortless, automatic, inevitable. The new self has nothing except your decision, your sustained, daily, moment-by-moment decision to think from the new identity instead of about it. There's a difference between those 2 words that changes everything. Thinking about the new self means you're standing outside it, admiring it, hoping for it. Thinking from the new self means you've moved in, you're already there, your inner conversations have shifted. The way you react to bad news has shifted. The assumptions you carry into every interaction have changed, because you changed the person carrying them. Neville called this living in the end, the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and he was careful to emphasize feeling, because intellectual agreement does almost nothing here. You can understand the concept perfectly and still walk around generating the same reality, because your emotional state, the state you actually live in moment to moment, is still tuned to the old frequency. Understanding is the map. Feeling is the territory. You have to move your actual body into the new land, not just study the geography. This is where the concept earns its weight. A ritual you perform once in a church gives you a memory. A psychological rebirth you sustain every single day gives you a new life. One is an event. The other is a discipline so demanding that most people abandon it within a week, because the old self fights back. It whispers. It presents evidence. It points at your bank account, your reflection, your inbox full of rejection, and it says, "See? You're still me." And in that moment, that exact moment, you have the choice that defines everything. Do you agree with the evidence of the old world, or do you hold to the assumption of the new one? Faith, in this context, has nothing to do with religious belief. Faith is loyalty to your unseen reality over your visible one. It's the discipline of feeling employed before the offer arrives, feeling loved before the person shows up, feeling wealthy while the numbers still look thin. Someone will push back here, and they should. This sounds like delusion, positive thinking wrapped in scripture. And if all you did was feel good while ignoring practical action, they'd be right. But the instruction was never to sit in a room and visualize. The instruction was to change the inner man so thoroughly that your outer actions flow from a different source. When you genuinely feel like a person who belongs at the table, you stop hesitating at the door. When your internal identity shifts, your behavior shifts with it, and behavior is what reshapes the physical world. The biblical text supports this reading at every turn. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. The transformation is mental. It always was. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The emphasis on the heart, on the deep feeling level conviction, makes it clear this was never about intellectual assent. You don't think your way into a new life. You feel your way in, and then you think from that feeling. Your old self-concept was built by accident. Experiences happened to you. People said things. You drew conclusions. None of it was chosen. You were a child assembling an identity out of whatever fragments the world threw at you. The born-again experience, the real one, is the moment you stop accepting the accidental self and start building the intentional one. Think about what that means for every area of your life that feels stuck. The relationship pattern that keeps repeating. The financial ceiling you keep hitting. The way opportunities seem to show up for everyone around you, but somehow miss your address. These patterns are faithful expressions of the old self-concept. They're mirrors reflecting back exactly what you've been assuming about yourself in the privacy of your own mind. Change the assumption, sustain the change through every temptation to revert, and the mirror has no choice but to update. This takes patience that borders on stubbornness. The world doesn't rearrange itself overnight. There's a bridge of incidents, Neville's term for the series of events that naturally unfold to bring your assumption into physical form. During that bridge, everything might look the same. The old evidence is still sitting on your desk. The old circumstances are still in the room, and you have to walk past all of it, morning after morning, holding the feeling of the new self like a flame cupped in both hands during a windstorm. The death of the old self is quiet. There's no funeral. Nobody sends flowers. One day, you just notice that the voice which used to narrate your failures has gone silent. The knee-jerk reaction of unworthiness doesn't fire when something good happens. You catch yourself responding to a situation the way the new person would respond, and it doesn't feel like acting anymore. It feels like breathing. That's the resurrection. The part they don't talk about in most sermons. You buried the old man in the waters of your former consciousness, and something else stood up. Something you chose, something you built thought by thought, assumption by assumption, feeling by feeling across weeks and months of invisible inner labor that no one around you could see. Nicodemus asked how a man could be born twice. The answer was always the same. The first birth gave you a body you had no say in. The second birth gives you a self you design on purpose. And the only womb is your own imagination.